On today's show, Patrick Beverley traded to the Lakers. What does this mean for them and Russell Westbrook's future? Plus, the latest on Donovan Mitchell, Chet Holmgren's season-ending injury, and we rank the most clutch players in the NBA. All of that and much more coming up on today's Locked On NBA.
You are Locked On NBA, your daily NBA podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Friday Locked On NBA, your daily podcast on the NBA. However you might be tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or on your favorite podcast app, thank you so much for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg from Locked On Heat, here with Mike Richman from Locked On Trailblazers. Mike, thanks for jumping on here on a special Friday episode. How you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm doing pretty well.
Yeah, good. Well, you and I are going to talk Donovan Mitchell and Chet Holmgren in a minute, but let's start with the Lakers, who traded Talen Horton-Tucker and Stanley Johnson to the Utah Jazz for point guard Patrick Beverley. Mike, what are your thoughts on the deal?
I think the Lakers upgraded their roster, but it's like the cycle of a couple years of having a lot of stupid roster decisions make this one feel a little bit worse. I think Patrick Beverley helps. He plays defense. He'll help kind of their issues with they're kind of quitters last year. They would quit a lot. And I think Pat Bev's sort of MO is like, hey, we have to continue to play hard. I think that'll help sort of the general chumpiness cure that they could use. And in theory, he could shoot. He didn't shoot very well last year, but he's like a career 38% three-point shooter. Those guys typically play well next to LeBron. I don't know how they guard wings still, but in theory, he helps. In theory, he helps. And for Utah, Talen Horton-Tucker was supposed to be the key to an all-star. So I guess he'll help. He ended up being the key to Pat Bev. Sure. He's 22. I think on non-Lakers roster, he can be better. He's got some on-ball juice. And if he ends up being a starting guard there, depending on what happens with Donovan Mitchell, I think you have some upside.
Makes sense for Utah. You have no use for Patrick Beverley. They also still have other vets, Bojan Bogdanovic, Mike Conley. Like, you figure all those guys, once the Donovan Mitchell domino falls, like, those guys will start being talked about more in trades too. Like, this is a rebuilding team. They've pretty much signaled that. So get a couple young guys. For the Lakers, it's interesting, right? Because, yeah, you didn't have to part with any of your first-round picks, which it feels like they've been reluctant to do so far. And you do upgrade the roster. Patrick Beverley is a better player for that team than Talen Horton-Tucker was, than Stanley Johnson even was, even though he was impressive for them last year. But it's just another one of these 2-for-1 deals. Like, it just feels like the Lakers, ever since they won the championship in the bubble, are just sort of making these kinds of trades. You know, with the Russell Westbrook one being probably the loudest one, right? You just basically move your entire rotation out to get Russell Westbrook in. And now Patrick Beverley, I do think it upgrades the roster, but this was already a thin group that just got a little bit thinner, And so I really don't know what the other option was if you're not going to move these picks. But now that you don't have sort of that big chunky salary of Talen Horton-Tucker, which, by the way, finally we can have Lakers fans stop talking about, well, Talen Horton-Tucker and this will get us this thing. Like, now that thing is over. We don't have that as a conversation starter. But what's the pathway to Buddy Hield, Miles Turner, name the grouping that you wanted? I don't know. Maybe that stuff was never really feasible or on the table as much as it's been talked about. It kind of feels like maybe we've talked about it so long that maybe if it were ever going to happen, it probably would have happened by now. But
I kind of think this deal keeps that open. Like, if you're just reading the sort of power broker tea leaves, when Adrian Wojnarowski tweets, "There are no picks in the deal," to me that says the picks are still there for Buddy Hield. Hello, Kevin Pritchard and Chad Buchanan in Indiana. I think it's still, to me, this keeps open those other trades. It's just like, without Talen Horton-Tucker, you have one less part to trade.
Right. You still have the Westbrook salary, which I guess you would have to attach those picks to. Another team would buy out Westbrook, presumably, or whatever, and then you get those players back. I guess that's the next move, right? And so that kind of leads us to our next question is, does this mean Russell Westbrook is gone? Because, of course, Patrick Beverley and Russell Westbrook play the same position. I don't know if you can start them in the backcourt. I don't know if you have any better options if you're I don't know. What do you think about Russell Westbrook's future now in LA?
I mean, more than the positionality stuff, they have 10 years of pretty well-documented beef. Pat Bev and Russell Westbrook have pretty openly disliked each other for closing in on a decade. It was I believe the 2013 playoffs when Pat Bev lunged for a loose ball after a timeout and helped Russell Westbrook tear the meniscus in his knee,
Right.
causing him to miss a significant chunk of time. Then there's a whole bunch of stuff. I think it's 2018, 2019 when Russell Westbrook famously said Pat Bev tricked y'all. And it became a meme because all Pat Bev does is run around. He's no good on defense. Then last year at the trade deadline, Patrick Beverley is out there tweeting, guess who tricked y'all? My man is a magician this year, and was like, actively trolling Westbrook in February of this year. Like, not exactly ancient history. This is 6 months ago. People can get over it. Different working conditions change things, but like, seems like two dudes who don't like each other, and you're bringing them into the same locker room. And NBA locker rooms, there's a fragile ecosystem. It's only 15 dudes.
Yeah. Westbrook has beef with a lot of guys right now with the Lakers.
Yeah,
I mean, they did fire the one guy he had the most beef with in Frank Vogel, apparently. But LeBron, Russell Westbrook, Summer League, not sitting next to each other. Maybe some simmering beef there. I don't know. The Patrick Beverley thing is interesting. I don't know if he tried to quash it a little bit. There was this ESPN appearance that he gave, I don't know, a month ago, 2 months ago, who knows, where they asked if he would be willing to play for the Lakers. And then he basically said, yeah, I would love to play for them, play with legends like LeBron James and Russell Westbrook. So I don't know if that meant that Pat Bev had some sort of inkling that this was maybe on the table even back then, but I don't know. I don't know how much it does directly impact Russell Westbrook's future in Los Angeles more than how questionable Westbrook's future was already in Los Angeles, right? Like, this is a player that they were already trying to move off of. I don't know that getting Patrick Beverley means that they're trying harder to move off of him. Maybe the only thing means that maybe they think it's a little bit more imminent, or because it's the plan, they need to have an answer at that point guard spot regardless. So either way,
maybe they were waiting for the Kevin Durant domino to fall because they
Right.
realized they were kind of out of the sweepstakes, and now it's like, okay, we got to do our little minor stuff to make this team get better. But I'm with you. I don't think Russell Westbrook, it was, on Monday he was a weird fit and probably a short timer in LA, and on Wednesday night when this happened, he was a weird fit and a short timer in LA.
Yeah, woke up a Laker, blessed, right? That's the tweet. Well, you mentioned dominoes falling after Kevin Durant. The Donovan Mitchell one is the next big one. That's what we're going to talk about next because we have the latest reports around that. But first, today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all of your betting needs. Find your favorite sports and events at the #1 online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports wagering information, plus live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. It's BetOnline, where the game starts. Back here with Locked On NBA, Wes Goldberg with Mike Richman. Let's talk Donovan Mitchell now, right? Got a new report coming from Tony Jones of The Athletic, who writes that Donovan Mitchell has a list of 3 preferred destinations should he be traded: New York, Brooklyn, and Miami. Now, the Jazz and the Knicks are having conversations about a trade basically as you and I record this show, Mike. So do you read this as anything more than just a leverage play by the Utah Jazz in their pursuits of maybe trying to wring out a little bit more from the Knicks in a Donovan Mitchell deal?
Yeah, that's exactly my read, is that it's that the Donovan Mitchell camp and the Jazz camp are like, it would be better if there was a frothier market for this gentleman, and so they're making it so it looks like he has a frothier market. I think he ends up a Knick. Like, I don't know if this really changes it, because they seem to be the team in the hottest pursuit, a team that can make it happen, offer the Jazz what they want. But yeah, this seems like sort of classic public posturing.
Right. Within that same piece, Tony Jones acknowledging the Heat don't have anything that interests the Utah Jazz enough to get the deal over the hump. There's other reporting.
Duncan Robinson, born Jasmine. Duncan Robinson, born Jasmine.
Yeah. The Salt Lake Tribune reported that there are members of that front office in Utah that prefer Tyler Hero over RJ Barrett. Now, maybe that's true. I don't know who in that front office feels that way or how much weight they have in those kinds of conversations. But whatever. There are things here and there, but ultimately the Knicks have 11 future first-round picks. They've got a bunch of interesting young players. Miami doesn't have. They have some interesting young players. I don't think as many or as young as the Knicks do, and certainly the draft pick part of it is just sort of that's where it sort of ends. Miami only has 2 future first-rounders that they could deal right now, maybe a third if they lift protections on that OKC thing. but it doesn't even come close to what the Knicks can offer. And then as far as Brooklyn is concerned, like what?
What?
Yeah.
Like,
So
how does that happen? It's like
no,
if they could have swung that, they would do it. And it's like, why? The trade chip is Ben Simmons, right? Like that's the
right.
link. I don't know why Ben Simmons necessarily would appeal to Utah,
Right.
because of his money and all those things. Like he's good. I think he's pretty good,
Yeah.
but he's like an enigma and on
You're not
a
rebuilding around them.
right,
Yeah.
and you're paying him in a max contract, so it's a little bit
Right.
different. Yeah, it seems
And Brooklyn has no
it
picks
seems
either.
like right, and Brooklyn's all their picks belong to the Rockets, so it's like it's the Knicks still, but this report suggests that Donovan is open to going
Right.
to at least one of the other boroughs, if it's not Manhattan.
Yeah, it means a whole lot of nothing. This is just like, to me, it's just another sign that it's a matter of when and for what, and not if Donovan Mitchell ends up with the Knicks. Let's move now to Chet Holmgren. Unfortunately, will miss the entire season as he recovers from a ligament injury in his right foot that he suffered while defending, if that's even what you want to call it, LeBron James on a fast break during a recent Pro-Am run in Seattle. Mike, what does this mean for OKC?
It means they get what they want. Another year being bad. Like
Hmm.
it stinks that that's like their goal or whatever. I guess like maybe it doesn't stink if you're an OKC fan. Maybe you see the vision, but like Chet was an intriguing player and an intriguing player that I think a lot of people had some priors on about his injury proneness. And now it means he's not going to play for OKC and they're going to get a year to be, they were going to be one of the worst teams in the league regardless.
Right.
Now they're going to be one of the worst teams in the league without one of their intriguing young parts to see what's next.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bummer more than anything. It's just a super bummer. I was there in Summer League watching Chet Holmgren, and he looked awesome. Like, he's just a really interesting, sort of unique, fun player to watch. And so if you're a Thunder fan, you're not rooting for wins,
Right.
you're self-aware enough to know that, but maybe you're just rooting for, yeah, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, Josh Giddey, Chet Holmgren. Like, these are fun players. They are at least fun to watch. And now you have a little bit less fun with this season. So I think it takes the wind out of your sails if you're a Thunder fan a little bit. Like I said, just a bummer. But to your point, the Thunder want to be bad. I don't know that Chet Holmgren was going to take them to the playoffs, right? He's still, like, as promising and as interesting as he is, still a rookie. Rookies very rarely have that sort of impact on a team, especially a young and bad team like OKC is. But this does just sort of, if it knocks off like 2, 3, 4 wins, whatever it would have been over the regular season, you get a couple of more lottery balls in your favor, whatever, and now maybe you have a chance at Victor Wembanyama, who's sort of the belle of the ball in the next draft, and you maybe add him to Chet and Giddey and SGA if he's still kicking around there. Who knows? And all the other young things that they got going on there. It's interesting. But as far as the Chet Holmgren part goes, should Thunder fans be worried? Because one of the knocks on Holmgren going into the draft was his size and sort of the injury risk that comes with that. Or is this just more of sort of a freak injury? Like, does this injury sort of signify or maybe underscore maybe some of the concerns people had with Chet going into this draft?
It's not the type of injury that would be associated with what the concerns were, right? Like this is
Right.
usually an injury that you get from having too much weight on your feet. It's pretty common in football. It's not a particularly common basketball injury. It's relatively common in football. Um, I read the In Street Clothes article by Jeff Stotts today that
Yeah.
suggests that most guys in football who sustain this injury miss about 11 months. But it is not something that is like associated with someone being too skinny or not strong enough for all of those things. It's like it's a ligament injury that happens from putting weight on, you know, an specific acute injury for it. So yeah, I think it does confirm some priors of people who were like, I told you he would get hurt. Like it allows you to say that. And you were right because he did get hurt. But it is not in the manner
Right.
in which I think was a fair way to say that he would. But that's not going to stop people from, ringing the bell if they thought they were right.
I wonder if teams look at this too, because Chet was playing in this Pro-Am thing that has nothing to do with the Oklahoma City Thunder. They just invested all of this time, energy, money into him as the number 2 overall pick. And before he can ever do anything of any meaningful value with them, he injures his right foot. And I got no reporting on this. I'm just speculating completely here, but like, the teams look at something like this and start putting into contracts, especially for younger players, hey, listen, you just can't do these Pro-Am runs, especially if LeBron James is coming at you as like a freight train, on a fast break. And I will say the last thing on this. Is there a level of irony that this happened in Seattle, the
Yeah.
team that the Thunder took away Is there any irony in that?
Cursed ground. He went back to cursed ground for the biggest NBA event in Seattle in 15 years, and of
Yeah.
course this happens. Yeah, there's something to it. Dudes are going to play basketball regardless if there's fans in the building or not. If he's not playing in a pro-am, he's going to go play pickup at UCLA. He's
Right.
going to go play pickup in Miami, those famed runs in warmer
Yeah.
climates that happened all summer long. So like, yeah, he's going to hoop, and if he was going to have an acute injury, it could happen anywhere. This just happened where it was like a big public deal.
Right.
So I could see if you are OKC being like, damn it, like why did this have to happen? But if anyone needed more seasoning against high level competition coming out of this draft, it was your boy Chet Holmgren. Like it was like he needed to
Right.
play against NBA level guys a bunch. So if it wasn't here, you would hope he was playing 5-on-5 basketball somewhere else. And if you play basketball, you might get hurt.
Klay Thompson tore his Achilles after tearing the ACL just warming up in LA. Just came
Right.
down weird, tore his Achilles, was not in a public pro-am or anything like that. No, it's a good point. Joel Embiid, Blake Griffin, guys who missed their entire first seasons as rookies, came back, and both of them had and still having pretty great careers. So not the end of the
Yeah,
world.
they're pretty
for Chet
talented, I'd
Holmgren,
say.
yeah. After the break, we'll rank the most clutch players in the NBA. This is Locked On NBA. All right, it's Friday, which means it's time to count down to the weekend. And today we are ranking our 5 most clutch players in the NBA. But instead of our normal just sort of countdown, just raw rankings, I thought we could switch it up, just the format a little bit. We're going to do a draft here, Mike. I'll let you go first since you're the guest. We're going to go snake style. You go first, and then I go, for those of you who don't know snake style for some reason. The idea is simple. Game's on the line. You need to put the ball in somebody's hands. Who you going with first? It's a pickup game of all the players in the NBA. Now, I think part of this is going to be, hey, like just your thoughts. Who's the best shooter? Who's the best passer, playmaker, most trustworthy, most clutch, just sort of in your head thinking about it. But there's also stats to back this stuff up, right? NBA.com, they keep these clutch stats. That stuff matters too. But I'm going to go with you since you're the guest. Who's your first overall pick in our clutch draft?
Yeah, I mean, I think legally, I'm the host of Locked On Blazers. I got to do it. Like I can't go back to my people and not have done this. I'm going to take Damian Lamont Ollie Lillard with the first overall pick. His bona fides, you have seen him in the playoffs. He's been pretty darn good at it. Basically, since he came into the league, he was someone who wanted to and made clutch shots, and he's authored 2 of the best shots in the history of the franchise, some iconic moments, a famously bad one over Paul George. So, yeah, Dame's going to be my first pick.
2 years ago, obviously barely played last year. 2 years ago,
Right.
shot 51% in clutch moments, which NBA.com defines as a game within 5 points with 5 minutes or less to go in the game. So Lillard, 51%, which is far and away the best. That's the best number among players who played in at least 25 games where they qualify for that stat. I have no problem with Damian Lillard. I'm gonna go Nikola Jokic with my second pick, and I think that might surprise some people. But first of all, just the raw numbers are great. 49.5% shooting in those situations last year. The year before that, 49.5% shooting in those situations. Incredibly efficient, incredibly consistent. And what's great about Jokic is he could get his shot off against anybody, but he can also get his pass off against anybody. We've seen those cross-court swings to open teammates for three-pointers that can win the game just this last season. 2-time MVP, obviously, in 2 straight seasons. I kind of think that Jokic kind of gets left out of this conversation. You don't think of a guy like Jokic, number one, he plays center, as a guy who you would consider putting the ball in his hands at the end of the game. You usually think of ball handlers, guys like Damian Lillard. But to me, outside of Dame, and I like the Dame pick, but like Jokic is my number one pick.
Yeah, Jokic also had some great defensive plays late in games last year.
True.
Like he's a great. He's on my list. He was the second guy on my list. I would have taken him. He's, you don't win back-to-back MVPs without being impactful late in games, and he's great at it. Like he's great at it, and he just whoops your ass at 1 mile an hour, and that is pretty entertaining, if nothing else.
Who's your next pick then?
My next pick. I'm also going big. I'm going to go Joel Embiid.
I like it.
Maybe someone who is even less than Jokic, like maybe considered like specifically not clutch, Joel Embiid, but his clutch numbers are bonkers.
Yes.
Bonkers. Shot 46% from 3 in the clutch. He's basically Steph Curry with the game on the line. He's big guys, and particularly Joel, he doesn't dribble across half court. if you don't dribble across half court, it's a little bit weirder. Someone has to pass you the ball in those clutch situations. But we saw in the playoffs against Toronto, hits a big three from the corner to win a game. Like, he did it all season long. Late clock Joel Embiid is clutch, and the dude can score from all over. And if nothing else, he's intimidating. So you have to send two people to him, which opens things up. To wit, his teammate, who may come up here later, has pretty good clutch numbers. A lefty with a beard has pretty good clutch numbers as well, in part because Joel has some real gravity.
I thought you were talking about Furkan Korkmaz, but then you gave it away with the beard.
Furk does have crazy clutch numbers if you're looking at it. My man puts it up.
Good for him. Good for Furk. Okay, so you took Embiid. I like that pick. I'm going DeMar DeRozan.
On my list, number 4.
I mean, he's awesome. 53.5% in clutch situations last year. 45.2% in clutch situations. And that's the shooting percentage. 2 years ago. I mean, just beyond the highlights, right? And remember, like, what was that in January or something that he just had like
back to back.
Yeah, back to back game winners. I mean, this is a guy who just knows how to get a shot. And yeah, he's not the best 3-point shooter, even though his clutch stats are kind of good, but that's on a super small sample size. It doesn't matter. But he just can work that mid-range area. Those spots that are used that look, you're not getting an open 3 in clutch situations, right? They're sending 2 to the ball if you're a primo 3-point shooting threat. Like you said, with even a guy like Embiid, when you're trying to get to the rim, they're double, triple teaming you because there's not much time left on the clock and they're trying to take the ball out of your hands. You need a guy who could just get into those weird little nooks and crannies on the court and just find a way to get a decent shot off. DeMar DeRozan is super good at that. His numbers throughout his career have been clutch. I'm going DeMar DeRozan.
Yeah, so he made 2 threes in clutch time all of last season. Both of them were game winners. Like, it's he doesn't do it often, but when he needs to, he can still get into the bag. Like, he was he had a nice little week there. For my next pick, this comes with some controversy because I've watched this man's career for 15 years. I'm going to pick regular season Chris Paul. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to pick regular season Chris Paul.
Okay.
I know that after game 85, Chris Paul gets worse. I have seen it with my own 2 eyes since about 2008. Really, really good in the playoffs prior to 2008 when he should have won MVP. Holler at your boy at Mike G. Rich on Twitter. But CP, his clutch numbers since he's been in Phoenix have been nuts. They're the best clutch offense in the league. He's the engine of that offense. Like, he's not their best player. Devin Booker is their best player. Devin Booker's clutch numbers, also fantastic. But if you watch the Suns, the guy driving the best clutch offense in the league is a 36-year-old and then recently 37-year-old point guard. He's been fantastic. I also saw Game 7. I know what happened against the Mavs. I know that there was a moment to come up clutch where they lost by 2,000 points. But give me regular season CP every day of the week.
Yeah, it's more than just shooting, right? And CP is obviously a very efficient shooter, but it's timing with the ball in your hands. It's making the right decision, not turning the ball over. And Chris Paul's numbers, especially the turnover numbers, the lack thereof, throughout his career in these moments are just ridiculously good. He's crazy efficient. You trust him ultimately with the ball in his hands in clutch time situations. So I've got no problem with Chris Paul there. I like the pick. Let's just do 2 more here. I think we got time for 2 more. I'm between 2 guys. Screw it. I'll go for the headline here. I'm going Ja Morant.
There you go.
I'm going Ja Morant. The numbers were great last year. 42% in clutch time situations. Led the league in points in those situations. The year before that, he was fine. But this is a guy on the rise. And the thing about Ja that I love is not afraid to take the shot. Even the 3-point shot, which I think if you're a Memphis fan, sometimes you scratch your head at the fact that he takes like 11 threes a game or whatever it is. And you're like, why? But what I saw against Golden State before he got injured in that semifinal series in the playoffs was an ability to just get to his spot, which is right by the rim, use that shoulder, and then go up, use glass or not, and just get a bucket. And that guy has such long arms. He is so athletic. He has such great body control. He has such great awareness, and he's got that instinct, that timing instinct of all those things. He could just put his head down and go get a bucket. Plus, a phenomenal passer, a pretty good decision maker. I think he actually gets better in those situations because he stops taking all those threes and starts getting to the basket. I like Ja Morant here. I'm going to take him.
Yeah. I mean, the 3-point shooting, his clutch 3-point shooting numbers are not great.
No.
But he's, he shoots 86% from the line and gets there frequently, and he's shooting above 50% on twos. Like, I can do the math. Above 50% on twos is enough. It's enough to get you there. So yeah, like I got no problem with Ja. He was on my list, probably a little lower than this.
Sure.
So I'm gonna go Luka Doncic,
Oh, all
whose
right.
numbers do not back this up.
No, but I like it.
The numbers in the regular season particularly do not back this up. But I can't bet against this dude. Like I mean, I'm a numbers guy. Like I'm not someone who's like watch the games, nerd. I'm like I am a nerd watching the games, right? But like I recognize when I was preparing for this, you said, "Hey, let's do a clutch draft." I was like, "Okay, yeah, here's my list." And I was trying to find the numbers. I was, Luka's not as good as I thought he would be. Like, why is he not up here? Where is his name on the list? As I keep scrolling and scrolling, but I've seen him too many times in big leverage moments get to his left and hit shots. Do not let Luka go left in the clutch. He will beat you. They have a name for it in Dallas. It happens so frequently. It's Luka Magic. Even if overall the efficiency is a little low because he's such a high usage guy, give me Luka and give me Luka with the game on the line because of the size, because of the passing, and because of that. A man going to his left, he's pretty darn good at it.
I have no problem with it. I really don't. Sometimes we get a little too caught up in the numbers, and basically with these numbers, they're all such small sample sizes that you don't want to fully rely on them, right? And that's part of the reason too why I still feel a little funny not having 3 guys on this team in this draft. We didn't say LeBron James's name. We didn't say Steph Curry. We didn't say Kevin Durant. Now
those are the other 2 on my list. Exactly. Yeah.
Those were the guys I was between Morant and Durant, and I just went for the kind of more surprising one. I went with Morant, even though if I was actually doing this practice, like if I were a coach and I needed to get a bucket at the end of a game, and this was real life, I probably still might just go with LeBron just because it's LeBron, or Kevin Durant just because it's Kevin Durant. I'm not saying
it'd be hard to pick against KD if you need one basket, right? Like of anyone in the world,
right? And Steph's clutch numbers throughout his career have not been great, but it's Steph Curry, and that's some of that is a function of the fact that just how Golden State plays, and they basically face guard him and put 3 in his face, and he makes plays into other people, and Draymond's getting people into whatever. And obviously Kevin Durant was there for a few years, but yeah, I like the list. I'm good with it.
The Steph stuff is like his most clutch moments come with like 9 minutes left in the fourth quarter when he ends the game, so you can't come back. It's like we're gonna make a push, and then Steph hits 2 threes, and all of a sudden you're down 14 again.
Yeah, he buries it.
So yeah, like he's doing the night thing or whatever, and it's like the most clutch thing you can do is avoid clutch time.
Well, that's it for our clutch time, Mike. Thanks for joining me. This was fun. Remember to subscribe to new episodes of Locked On NBA wherever you listen to podcasts for 30 minutes of the NBA's top stories every day until next Friday. You can find me over at Locked On Heat, Mike over at Locked On Trailblazers. Thank you for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day.